In the beginning, darkness covered the face of the earth. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Genesis 1, verse 1. Into darkness God spoke, and with that word, darkness turned to light. This is such a beautiful idea, one we don't spend nearly enough time reflecting upon, this power of a word to create. In his lovely and altogether heartbreaking novel, Here I Am, Jonathan Safran Foer gets at this by writing, "Giving a word to a thing is to give it life. Let there be light, God said, and there was light. No magic, no raised hands or thunder. The articulation made it possible. It is perhaps the most powerful of all Jewish ideas," Foer's character explains. Expression is generative. The most powerful of ideas, expression, is generative. There was darkness, then God spoke, and then there was light. Today's gospel lesson, which comes to us from John chapter 14, Jesus has just announced to his disciples that he will soon be going away. And he is talking to them about how they are to comport themselves in his absence. And after having commanded them to love one another, he then says something quite significant. He then says, "The word that you hear is not mine, but is from the Father who sent me." The word that you hear. The word that you hear. "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me," the old children's saying has it. Well, that's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. A word can do more damage to a human being than all sorts of physical acts of aggression. A word can cripple a person for life with feelings of insecurity and unworthiness. A word can perpetuate divisions and prejudices that can ripple outward for centuries. A word can conjure desires for a life of recklessness and unfaithfulness. A word can destroy individuals and families and nations and civilizations. For the words that we hear never just evaporate. They never just go away. No, instead they settle in. They take root. And they influence. And then they redirect. Words are like energy in that way. Once generated, they're never destroyed, merely passed from one place to another. I hear all sorts of bad words, and I don't just mean profanity, though I hear plenty of that too. It's hard to watch anything these days that isn't littered with gratuitous profanity. And saying that, I do indeed hear what a fuddy-duddy I am quickly becoming. But beyond profanity, I hear all sorts of really bad words. Words that are like fists, aimed to strike. And I hear such words as these all over the place. Cable news and social media, newspaper columns and magazine essays, group meetings and individual conversation, pulpits and platforms. We all know when we have just been struck by or hollowed out by a word. Just as we all know when the word that we've just spoken was intended to hurt or to isolate. And the sad truth is that we hear such words and we speak such words all the time. Yes, expression, Foer's character says, is generative, meaning a word gives life. The articulation, he says, makes things, whether good things or bad things, possible. Expression is generative. Reflect again upon this. In the beginning, darkness covered everything. Then God said, "Let there be light." Then there was light. Expression is generative. Articulation makes things possible. When darkness covers the earth, a word can bring light. Boy, do we need light right now. Which means we need good words. The word that you hear from me, Jesus says, is not my own, but is the word of my Father. And that word, the one Jesus is speaking about here, is love. And not just any love, agape love. Others-focused love, humble, charitable, patient, giving love. We're not talking here about squishy feelings or a kind of tolerance of one another that is more like apathy, or a pretense that the world and that our relationships with one another are less complicated and fraught than they really are. We're not talking about any of that. No, instead, we're talking about the kind of love that seeks greater understanding. Talk about the kind of love that works for peace. Talking about the kind of love that aims to heal. Talking about the kind of love that hopes good things even for those with whom we struggle the most. The words one hears from us either advance these things or they don't. And the words that we hear ourselves either make us likelier to speak in such constructive ways, or they make us likelier to use our words to destroy. Expression is generative. Articulation makes things possible, good or bad. Oh, what a great forest is set ablaze by a small fire, James, the brother of Jesus, writes in the epistle bearing his name. He is talking here, of course, about the power of the tongue, about the power of words to cripple and to maim and to wound and to destroy. But what James doesn't mention in this exact part on the power of the tongue is the power of words to edify and to inspire and to heal. The power of a mere word to disarm or to relieve or to unburden. They will know you are my disciples by your love, Jesus says. Going on to say, the word that you hear from me is not my own, but comes from my Father, which means that love, therefore, is like light. So much so that as darkness covers the face of the earth, a simple, loving word like the simple flip of a switch has the power to drive the very darkness away. And dear family, in a world where darkness indeed covers the face of the earth, a world where bigotry leads to teenagers massacring others in the name of racial identity. A world where our politics inspires gross acts of violence and intimidation. A world where the images we see on our screens leads to the objectification or the near deification of others. A world where we celebrate vengeance and violence, in a world where the voices we listen to for guidance on all these things too often justify them in the name of their own warped ideological perspectives. Dear family, in such a world, we need to pay close attention to the words that we hear, prayerfully trying to discern if underneath those words we truly do hear an echo of the Word. Because make no mistake, the same voice that spoke the world into being, the same voice that flooded the darkness with light by the mere articulation of a word, make no mistake, that voice calls out to us yet. In fact, that voice speaks to us and through us yet, driving out darkness and bringing forth light and leading to the healing of all manner of things. They will know we are Christians by our love. So may our love be made known by the things that we say, and may the things that we say be inspired by the things that we hear. Yes, with darkness covering the face of the earth, may our expression generate light, that creation might in us daily be made new. And all God's people said, Amen. And now, as we prepare to sing our hymn of response, I will be down front to receive any who might this day want